So, Panorama really pretty much pissed me off yesterday. If you want to piss me off, talk about housing market and try and say a whole bunch of shit. I didn't know why the housing market was going up and up and up and up, and I had the horrible experience of coming out of uni, going back to London, wanting to buy a property, only to realize that all the properties are 250,000. I didn't have a job. I didn't have any money. I couldn't get on the market. And then every single year, just knowing that the housing market is going up and up and up and up, and then you're just feeling like shit because you can't afford anything. You can't get on the market. You can't save up. You can't get a job. I went through absolute years and years and years of depression, and I guess part of me thinking what is the problem. Okay, me seemed to always be the obvious answer, because why couldn't I get a job? Maybe I was stupid, maybe I just wasn't able to. I don't know, like the idea of just sitting in a shop and going beep 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 was hilariously, no, not hilariously, hideously horrible. And then I was just kind of thinking, like, what kind of jobs are there, and no one seemed to like give me an opportunity or anything, and so I had to go through that for years and years, and then to just go through everything I've gone through, and then to just have a bunch of people say, just build more houses. It's incredibly insulting. It's incredibly insulting to the fact that the economy is completely falling apart, that businesses cannot survive because of just them not being able to earn enough money. A meal is supposed to cost £10. Now it costs about 20. People can't afford to go to have I heard that Pizza Hut is in recline as well, and people can't afford to spend 17, £18 on a pizza, because we can go to a cheaper place and get it for £10. I have no idea how these cheaper places survive, though, because if they're paying like £200 a day for rent and they can only sell 20 pizzas in a day, well, okay, they've made their rent, but what about the salaries of all the people that stand in these places and just earn money? What about the businesses that have to pay for these people to, maybe the only reason why all the shops in Birmingham that are open are Islamic is because they've managed to bring illegals in here, and they've got the illegals to work for a far less cost. They said, okay, in your country you'd earn £50 a day, well, or no, less, probably less, I don't know, £20 a day, £30 a day, but if you come and work here, we'll give you £50 a day. Technically they should be charged £12 an hour or £10 an hour, which is minimum wage, and if they're working 7-hour shifts, that's actually £70. But maybe they're doing it by, I don't know, avoiding tax or because if you're paying tax on top of that, you can't pay your people proper money, and if these people can't earn proper money, then they can't afford proper rent, and they can't afford anything, and then the whole economy is just collapsing and falling apart. The middle class is disappearing. I think I'm seeing it more in Birmingham, because Birmingham is kind of an area that doesn't have that many jobs. It doesn't have a huge amount of intelligent people in it, and I saw there was a rise at the beginning when I first came here. It was clear that a lot of people were moving out of London, and obviously they were going more north. They didn't want to be a slave to the bankers. They didn't want to spend 250 or 350 pounds on a 1-bedroom flat in London. They couldn't afford that. Maybe you would have got a 2-bedroom for 350, but the only way to get that was to become a slave to the bankers, and they didn't want it. So they've moved further up north. They might have not been able to get as high a wage because of this, but they've travelled up. But I feel like this growth of house price being risen is getting more. It's getting higher and higher, and it's not because there's not enough houses. It's because the bankers are taking up huge amounts of They're taking out huge amounts of mortgage and rent. I mean, are they paying tax? If say you own a quarter, and the houses and the people who own the mortgages are getting 3 times as much as the homeowner. The homeowner has to pay for the renovation, or if things are falling apart, if they have to get a new kitchen, new bathroom, so and then they're doing all the groundwork, the managing work. So the homeowner is doing all the work, and yet the majority of the homeowners only own a quarter share of these properties. The bank owners own a huge amount. Are they paying tax? I mean, if these bank owners live in different countries, then why are they not paying tax on all this amount of money that they're making through our country, through our system? system? Are they making money? I just don't know. I mean, I know that making more houses is what they're doing, but if the bankers are actually just wanting to make more houses because they now have a bunch of money, and they realize that they can loan out more loans, more they can enslave more people. Is that what they're doing? Is that just thinking, wow, we've got now more money, we've taken all the rent, they're all these people that we've enslaved are paying huge amounts of rent. Okay, their tax is about £8,000 a year, but look, we're charging £20 a year for rent. So we're now way more we're now way richer than the government. The government gets to take 8,000, and they have to use that money to spend on the society, and trying to build up things like paying for fire departments or police officers. So the government owns a smaller bit, but if the rent is like 20,000 a year, then the people who are making this kind of money are the ones that are getting richer and richer and richer. And if these people don't even live in England, then we're probably not even charging them tax. So they're literally just getting richer and richer and richer, and people are being deceived into thinking, oh, there's not enough houses, people are not able to afford housing. Yeah, people are not able to afford houses, not because there aren't enough houses, it's because people from abroad are buying them up on these loans that make them technically not own these properties. But if not owning the property just literally means that they don't have to pay for renovations, they don't have to put a new kitchen in, they don't have to that's probably what all these things, these schemes are, to offer free boilers and free installation. I don't know. It's not about what I'm getting, it's what I'm seeing online. I'm seeing so many benefits about doing this to your house, doing this to your house. I think whoever's doing that is probably the billionaires. The billionaires own these houses. They know that the people, they technically own the houses because they own the biggest share of the mortgage. Now, if they own the bigger share of the mortgage, they know that the people that have actually bought the houses off them can't actually pay to renovate them because they're not making enough money to renovate it. They're literally just being paid as like a kind of sitting goat to try and take up the money from the rental costs and then just give it to the bankers. So these people aren't owners of these properties. They're like part owners of the property, but partly because of this, it just means that the bankers have more control over this part that they own. Because if the housing, if the valuation or the wealth, the worth, if the cost or the maintenance of the house starts falling apart, they're going to find that the house market drops. It becomes less valuable. But if it becomes less valuable, it's not going to affect the bankers at all. It's going to affect the person who owns that little share of the house. Now, if it owns a little share of the house, then that person is going to be forced to want to maintain it, to want to keep it up to a high standard. But they can't keep it up to a high standard if they're not actually making enough money on it. So the people who own these houses are actually just the bankers. So maybe that's what the free scheme's about. It's not about helping the people who own the houses. It's about them realizing that actually the people who own the houses don't have enough money to look after the houses, and then they need to look after the houses. But okay, they get this power to do this, but it's not actually helping anyone, because you're still keeping the people in the country enslaved. They can't work, they can't earn anything because the jobs are just falling apart. That the people that are coming into this country are not decent enough to be able to hold a society together, and you're bringing all these third worlders in that can't. I left London. I was removed from London basically because the housing market was totally fucked up, and now I just feel like whatever that problem was happening in London, it is happening all over Europe and all over England, and it's disgusting, because I was hugely angry at what they did to me. They chucked me out of a place that I wanted to live. Why? Because these people were rich. They weren't rich, they were just stupid enough to take out these gigantic mortgages and become a slave to the bank. They were just like, oh, I'm an idiot, I don't mind. They were like my sister. Oh yeah, that's fine, take out a £300,000 loan, even though there's no chance you're ever going to be able to make that £300 loan back. My sister's got this sort of delusion that she's rich because her partner was rich, so she thinks that she's richer and smarter than she is, and she's not. And there's too many the idiots that are like this. They think they're smart and they're not, and there's too many people that are thinking, I don't care, I want the property. If that means taking out £300,000 mortgage, then I'm going to do that. But what they actually find is that the house probably falls in value. They don't look it up. They don't maintain it. They maybe get bad tenants that can't pay. Like my sister's partner, he bought a house in Madeira, and he got some bad tenants, got rid of them after a while, got more bad tenants, got rid of them after a while, and then he's got this really bad tenant that's basically just sat in there for 3 years not paying rent, and he's now not been able to pay off the mortgage, and he ended up having, I think he managed to pause the mortgage that he owned still on it, but he can't get out a mortgage now. Now I think that's actually a benefit, because that's the only thing that saved my sister from buying this third house, or this other house of hers. She was going to have another £180,000 mortgage, as well as taking out a gigantic mortgage on her one bedroom, and so yeah, she would have just lost all her money basically. And I think that's what's happening, that the bankers are getting richer and richer. They're seeing it as like a game of Monopoly. How can we find people that are rich and then trick them into buying like loads of properties? The Somalians are going to come in, they're not going to pay their rent, and then the people who own the houses are just going to become bankrupt. And they don't realize that by doing this, you are actually destroying the economy, because there's a lot of people that just don't want to work. They just want to rely on benefits. Benefits means that they have to get money from the taxpayer to pay for this, but if the taxpayer is just getting poorer and poorer and poorer because they aren't getting enough jobs, that they're losing jobs, they're losing work. And it's just annoying to think that there are a bunch of people who are in their 60s that have a nice big house. I've always had a nice big house. They can save, they can earn, even if they can only earn £10,000 a year, or save £10,000 a year, they still get richer and richer. Okay, it's not very much. You don't get that much rich. I spent 10 years being able to buy that second property, and I only own half of it. I came here in 2017, and I somehow managed to save up. I guess I was working quite hard, because I was trying to buy a second property before the housing market went up again, and so I managed to buy 40% within 2 years. I think I had to borrow 10,000 off George, and then I paid that back within 6 months. But I did manage to pay it off, and then I was trying to save up to buy I had to save up for another 2 years to try and buy the other half, and my sister didn't sell. But it took me, it is because I stopped working halfway through, because I realized that this was just stupid, because the housing market was just going up too high. I wasn't able to work. I didn't like doing massage. I don't want to be a slave. And it's taken me 10 years. I've been here 9 years, and that's how long it took me 8 years. It took me about 8 years to be able to buy a half of a property just to rent it out. And what am I getting for this rented out property? £5,000 a year. I mean, it's probably quite a high interest rate, but I just think what I've had to do to get that money. If all I needed to do to make 90,000 was to just sit in an office with a suit on and just pretend that I'm doing something, and if I could have earned money that way, then I don't know what rich people did to earn their money, but I didn't do that. I actually did it through years and years of harassment, sexual harassment. I've put up with sexual harassment for a huge amount of time now. Okay, a lot of these clients are good people. A lot of them are bad though, so you get the mixture. And I've really hated this job, and then to just know that there are people out there that are just superly wealthy, superly rich, and they just do nothing but just take in revenue from people. And it's like, on one hand I want to hate them, but on the other hand I just hate society, and I hate so many people that it's like I'm angry at the people who are just sitting back doing nothing. The people who are 70 or 50 and they bought a house when they were young, or maybe they bought a couple of houses when they were young, and then they've just sold them off, and then they've just lived off. If their businesses are falling apart, they're just going to think, why am I in the business? I might as well sell the business for whatever I can, and then go and buy a property and then just rent it out. And too many people are feeling forced to rely on this housing market, and then the housing market is almost funding itself in a way. There's people making money on houses, but then this tax money is being used to just house lots and lots of people, so that the houses become empty, and so that the houses become full, and then people who have children can't get onto the housing market because the houses are all full, and they're only full because people have gone to third world countries and just brought all these people in and said, look, they're full now. They're full because you put them in there, and then you've got like. I'm repeating that. It's very, very stressful and very, very annoying, because I haven't lived in a nice home. Okay, this is a nice house and I've been here for a long time, but I have to walk out and I see all these people dressed up in Islamic clothing, and it's just, this is, I got a nice home, but my sacrifice was that I have to live in Birmingham. And it's just really annoying to think that there are, I would love to know the people in the government. What kind of houses are they having, and when did they buy their houses? How have they got rich? What do they like having a big, nice £1 million house whilst knowing that there's a bunch of students that are coming out of the universities with £90,000 of debt? They can't get a mortgage because they're already taken out a massive loan to just be able to fund this education, to get some sort of job, only to realize that the economy system isn't as good as it was, and they might have to be forced to be a masseuse or just work as like a shop owner or something. This is causing huge amounts of depression and mental illness and anxiety and problems in people, and also people having to take 3 jobs just to be able to pay the mortgage, and accidents that can happen because of overworking. You've turned the whole system into a bunch of slaves, and I think a lot of people are turning to crime, and then you have to have jobs to try and fight and combat the crime, when really if people weren't so greedy, if people hadn't created such a false system, then maybe crime wouldn't be as high as it is. People are turning to crime because they don't feel like they have a choice. It's either crime or living on the streets. What would you rather, live on the streets or turn to crime? More and more people, what would I rather, live on the streets or turn to massage? I'd rather turn to massage, but guys probably don't have that as an option, and even women might not have that as an option because they might get too pissed off with all the sexual harassment that they get. There's so many jobs that are just shit, and people are forced to go on to them. And what are they doing? Why are they doing this? To help give bankers lots of money? But why do the bankers want all this money? I don't understand. What, so they can just go and buy more houses and enslave more people, and then they can buy more and make more houses? We can just make more houses, and then we can just get the bankers to loan out gigantic loans on all these properties. The more houses you make, if every single one of these houses that you've made, 75% of them is owned by the banks, you're not making the people richer, you're making the banks richer. The banks are getting richer because they have more properties, more slaves, more, and it's just a real big problem. And so if Panorama wanted to piss me off, you've fucking done that by saying a bunch of shit about how we just need to build more houses. Yeah, build more houses, make more slaves, piss more people off, anger more people, create a false economy by saying that all we need to do is make bricks, and that's the only economy. We just need builders, bricks, and then realize, oh wait, actually no one has a business. Why? Because people can't afford to go into the shops. You can't afford to go into Tesco's and spend £8 on I've never spent £8. I go into Poundland, I go into the cheap places, and I have turned to some sort of £3 food bank thing that the council offer, because I think I'm paying £110 a month for council tax. Now I'm going to this £3 food bank thing, not because I need the food, well, not because I feel poor, but just because I want to try and get back my £110. But this is communism. You charge people so much rent when it comes to council tax that people don't have any money to spend in shops or on food or on the in the shop. So people are now forced to have to rely on the government. Like, that's the whole universal credit thing. Get everyone who doesn't own a house on universal credit, and then you basically just turn all these people into slaves. And on one hand, I don't like it because I don't like people being slaves. I don't like communism. I don't like this control that these morons have, because I'm looking at the people the social services, that woman that came over and said that I didn't have what it takes to look after a child. To me, I just see her as a bloody brainwashed moron. Is this still recording? Yeah, to me she seems like a moron. And if that's how I'm relating the council and the government to, just the brainwashed morons that work for the government, if that's what I'm relating the council to, then I don't want the council to have that much power. I don't want them to have that much control. Why? Because they're going to start making bad decisions. Who gets the free housing? Who gets the free benefits? I would like to believe that the people at the top know the difference. But if you've got people just lying, then how are you going to know that? Because the people at the top are going to have to rely on the people at the bottom to try and help them work out who deserves the benefits. But if the people at the bottom are too stupid to realize who deserves it and who doesn't, then you're just going to create a completely false economy and a false sense of who's smart and who's dumb. People are thinking the ones who are smart are the ones who are rich, but in reality, if the only ones who are rich are the ones who just bought a house 20-30 years ago and just didn't have, or decided not to spend their money on their kids. My mum gave me 50,000 to buy a property. Now, if houses are are like 300,000. You know, parents might find that they have to give their kids like 150,000, and what, how are they going to make this 150,000 if their salary is 40,000, but if, you know, tax and car, if everything goes and they've only got 20,000 left, what, they have to become a slave for 10 years just to be able to help their kids get onto the housing market? You know, you've turned the middle class into slaves by having such a high housing market. And if you think building more houses is going to be a good idea, it's only a good idea if you promise not to give them to the bankers. You have to say that this has to be owned by the people. The houses need to be owned by the people, and if they're not owned by the people, then they do not own the houses. Now, if you're saying that there's not enough houses because too many people are owning them, no, that the people are not owning them. It's the banks that are owning them. I'm just really, really angry at this, and it's the first time I've been to that badminton thing because I wanted to. That's the first time I went to that badminton court because I wanted to vent out anger.